Well, it is Election Day. Polls are open. They're closing at 7 p.m. tonight. And on the ballots is, of course, a whole host of races from statewide office holders to state House and state Senate to Congress and so on. But is the question of vaccine mandates for children to go to school on the ballot? While some across the country say democracy's on the ballot, you have Republicans vying for the governor's office and also for the attorney general's office saying that whether or not your kids going to public schools are going to be required to get the COVID-19 vaccine is very much on the ballot. Yesterday, the Republican candidate for governor, Darren Bailey, was with the Republican attorney general candidate, Thomas DeVore, and what they said were 100-plus mama bears during a election eve rally in Oak Brook, and this is how that played out from DeVore to Bailey, and then we'll also hear the Democratic incumbent Governor J.B. Pritzker's response to this, and all of this stems from some reporting done by woodhouse.substack.com. where Jessica Hockett got some emails internally with the Illinois Department of Public Health addressing how to go about mandating vaccines or putting new vaccines on a schedule for youth to go to K through 12 school. We'll actually be talking with Jessica Hockett coming up after this next break. But first, let's hear from Tom DeVore and Darren Bailey yesterday on Election Eve.
The emails that we have that were given to us by some very courageous mothers who do FOIA requests better than no other. Showed that they were already formulating their plan. Now, the short version of it is the Immunization Advisory Council of the state of Illinois has to have a meeting of that committee, and then they can make a recommendation about adding another vaccine that then goes to the Department of Health. The Department of Health can then promulgate a rule to add it. The General Assembly has no legislative needs. There's the JCAR oversight, but that's a different point. But the governor saying that the legislature makes that decision, again, was not the case. The law doesn't require it. So these emails that we have then provided now to the media shows that they were already formulating how to lay that out. And the director of the Department of Health now sent an email that said that they're likely going to receive some pushback in the promoting of vaccines in the short term. And you may have those say, well, that doesn't necessarily say they're doing it. And I would ask you, are there any other vaccines in the short term that the Department of Health would be promoting? No. Of course not. Of course not. I made a call to the Department of Health today, and I asked them, do you have the date for this meeting of this committee? And they said the best we know right now, it's the second week of December. So as we stand here today, around the second week of December, the Illinois Immunization Advisory Committee is set to have a hearing about making a recommendation. And you can ask yourself, do you think that they're going to have that and then recommend we don't add it? No. Again, draw your own conclusions. I think if you read the emails, the language is pretty clear. What can we do about that? How can we put forth an effort to stop there being a requirement? Because under the law of the state of Illinois, if that requirement is added properly by rule, then you have a choice as a parent. You either have your child receive it, you have a valid religious or medical exemption, or your child doesn't go to school and you have to do something different. Because the law allows them to kick your child out of school if you don't comply or have an exemption. How can you stop that in the short term?
Start your own.
It's real simple. Who appoints the director of the Department of Health? The governor. J.B. Pritzker made his choice, and I believe he made the wrong one. I am firmly convinced, but you're going to hear real soon, that Senator Bailey, when he becomes the governor of the state of Illinois, that he will not appoint anyone to the Department of Public Health that would try to promote, I'm going to use their words, promote adding any vaccines in the near future. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you, to talk about this, Senator Darren Bailey.
God bless you, and thank you all for being here today. This is absolutely amazing, and it is an honor to stand here with mothers and their children and parents in the future of Illinois that we are indeed fighting for.
Protect our kids.
And that is exactly what I promise. I promise you this, that your children's future will always be my top priority. I will not waver under pressure, and I will never stop fighting for them and the future of our state. J.B. Pritzker uses our kids to make political points. He locks school children out of their classrooms, and he tries to twist their tender minds with ideology in his quest to be the most left-wing governor in America. Now his minions are looking to impose vaccine mandates on our children. JB is a thief. No, absolutely not. That's right. JB is a thief who stole precious moments from our children. And they may never get those moments back. And now another experiment is in the works. Large-scale child vaccination. JB thinks that parents are dimwits as he lies to them as well as to the media. Just the other day, J.B., running for re-election, said that he would not mandate the COVID-19 vaccine on school-aged children. But now that we know his administration, that's right, he lied. Because now we know that his administration is exploring ways to do it after the election, just as Tom said. Parents, you can't trust this guy, and you know that. The charade is no surprise. JB has a well-documented history of thinking that unelected government bureaucrats know better than parents.
So again, that's the Republican gubernatorial candidate Darren Bailey saying he believes that Governor J.B. Pritzker behind the scenes is deliberating on how to go about mandating COVID-19 vaccines for school kids, something that the governor denies is happening. We'll hear from the governor, but we'll also get reaction to the governor denying this from the individual who helped get these emails out, Jessica Hockett. She joins us next. All right, so stay tuned. It's here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Republican challenger Darren Bailey says that Governor J.B. Pritzker is lying when he says that it's up to the legislature to mandate vaccines like COVID-19 vaccines. Again, here's Senator Bailey.
That's right. He lied. Because now we know that his administration is exploring ways to do it after the election, just as Tom said. Parents, you can't trust this guy, and you know that.
Well, what did the governor have to say yesterday? Well, I asked that question after a campaign rally here in Springfield, and here's what the governor had to say to my question, and then also a follow-up question from another reporter there on location at a labor hall here in Springfield on election eve.
Governor, can you clarify who's going to make the decision on COVID vaccine mandates for school kids?
Well, that's not something we're looking at doing, so it's really not a conversation that's even going on.
Senator Bailey and Tom DeGore are trying to say that you're going to experiment on kids by having a COVID-19 vaccine. Obviously, that's a lot of misinformation out there, but after you talk to voters the day before the election, this clearly isn't an election surprise, right?
Everything about Darren Bailey's campaign has been full of misinformation, untruths. He just likes to put things out there, hoping that people will believe something and vote for him and vote against it. The truth is, he is lying about what vaccines do. He is not vaccinated himself. He is not somebody who believes in mitigations. He's just putting out something new, hoping at the last minute in a desperate attempt to win some votes.
Any clarity that needs to be added to
There's absolutely nothing that's happening that's out of the ordinary. He's just making things up.
So again, Governor J.B. Pritzker saying that Darren Bailey's just making things up, but Darren Bailey making those comments after the website woodhouse.substack.com published internal emails they received via FOIA, and behind that website is Jessica Hockett. She joins us now here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop. Jessica, thanks for taking time. We're going to push the start of our news broadcast here in just a moment, but I want to definitely hear from you, your reaction to the governor there, but also delve into what you found through a Freedom of Information Act request to the Illinois Department of Public Health. Good morning.
Good morning, Greg. Thanks for having me on.
So your reaction to the governor?
He's not telling the truth. For him to say that there's not a conversation that's even going on, it belies the content of the emails that I and my friend Gracia Livy obtained. They are talking about it. The email thread that we obtained starts with an inquiry from a representative, the Democratic representative's office, basically saying, hey, we're hearing from parents who are wondering about whether this vaccine is going to be mandated for schools. What should we say? Is the governor going to issue a mandate? What's going to happen is basically the inquiry. Then there's some back and forth. It's actually kind of funny. The IDPH people have to kind of check the law. They don't know what the law is. And it's true that the legislature could pass a law. That might be the more difficult process, but there's also an executive branch path that starts with IDPH, some committee meetings, and some public hearings. And so within the email threads in the batch that we got, we see that there's a question from the governor's office the very day that he did a press conference and said that the legislature would have to pass a law. And the governor's office asked IDPH to add immunizations. Do we have to go through the committee and have 3 hearings? I mean, that is such a typical question from this governor's office, right? Like, do we have to do all this in order to get this passed?
Well, Jessica, I mean, he did mandate the vaccine, though, for K through 12 staff and for college students and staff. So, I mean, it's not out of the ordinary that the governor would mandate something like that.
Oh, yeah, it's completely consistent with his actions. And he might say, well, I didn't mandate the vaccine because people, could get a weekly test instead. We know it's coercion. So there's every reason to believe that he's going to attempt this. I'm not saying there's secret plans going on behind the scenes. I'm saying the mechanisms are being investigated. The governor's office is asking questions about what they would have to do. And we better believe we are going to see this set into motion. Whether it will actually happen or not, I don't know. I mean, the first step is voting this guy out, right? I mean, vote him out, and then we don't have to deal with this. Darren Bailey has already said, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to replace the director of IDPH and ISB and other agencies. And so that's what we can do right now is just vote Pritzker out.
We're talking with Jessica Hockett. She's behind woodhouse.substack.com. If you don't subscribe to that, go click on the subscribe button at that website, woodhouse.substack.com. A lot of important information that you've been able to delve into and unpack. But when I was looking at the process of how exactly a vaccine gets added after the CDC recommended that they add COVID-19 vaccine to the schedule of youth vaccines for 2023. I went to the State Board of Education website, and there it talks about vaccine mandates and the process, and you click through, and it's through a rule that the Illinois Department of Public Health can promulgate and put through, and that was my understanding. And then the governor says to Amy Jacobs' question, which Amy and I were just befuddled, by the way, that it took a week for somebody to ask this question to the governor, right, after the CDC made that happen. But obviously there is this path, and that was clearly laid out in the emails that you were able to get through FOIA.
Yeah. There's the path. I knew about this path. It's funny that he didn't, but it's interesting. Somebody must have tipped him off because, like I said, the day of that press conference, his office reached out to IDBH and it's like, wait, there's this other path, and maybe they already knew, right? To be fair, but it's completely disingenuous, if not an outright lie, for J.B. Pritzker to say like we're not even having those conversations. Those conversations aren't even going on. Yes, they are. Yes, they are, and the emails show it.
Jessica, how can people, of course, follow along with your work? We have the Substack there. Are you still prohibited from Twitter? Is your Twitter account still not live and active?
It's not, yeah, and I'm really hopeful that it's going to be reinstated. Elon Musk had said last week that suspended accounts wouldn't be reinstated for a couple of weeks. It probably has to do with the election. I wasn't suspended for, political, I should say like January 6th, right? That's not something that I talk about, not along those lines, but I understand his reasoning. I hope that very soon he gets rid of that COVID misinformation policy that Twitter has, under which a lot of accounts were suspended, not even just mine. So hopefully he'll get rid of that, and all of those accounts will be automatically reinstated very soon.
Well, pretty amazing to see Elon Musk on Twitter. Now, the owner of Twitter, he's the chief twit, saying yesterday that, in order to have a vibrant democracy, he's encouraging people to vote Republican because you have a Democrat in the White House. And he seems to indicate that that's going to bring about some balance. But we'll see what happens. Do you think that, as it's been kind of portrayed in the last day here, that whether or not COVID-19 vaccines are going to be mandated for kids is on the ballot today?
Oh, I absolutely do. Hey, look, whether or not it actually happens, if J.B. Pritzker is elected, he wants it to happen. He has to see this agenda through to the end, and so the best thing people can do is just not even have to deal with him and vote him out, and encourage others to do so as well.
Jessica Hockett, greatly appreciate your time. I imagine we will be talking about this issue and others in the future because there's still so much to unpack of what happened in the past 2.5 years with COVID-19, the impacts on children, the impacts on business, the impacts on our economy, and all of that we need deep dives into. Greatly appreciate your time this morning, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Thanks so much, Greg.
It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY.